Put the name of it in there. I'm going to turn the sound off on YouTube in just a second so I can hear you rather than YouTube.
Ghost. Yeah, it's free here in Michigan.
Somebody's watching one of our videos right this second.
Happy Mother's Day, everyone.
Happy Mother's Day. All the mommies.
Yeah.
I'm making a post real quick. I wish I could do this ahead of time, but I can't. So
It is what it is.
we got 2 people watching so far.
We're banging. Here's Amanda. I thought I remembered hearing that nitro. Or is that what it is? Saw being used.
I know Kim's coming. Hi, Colin. Colin.
Amanda, I'll get back to you. Go online.
Can you still see me?
Yeah.
Right.
She's got some like weird growth going on her lateral line of the fish, and then it's like coming up around the head. It's like crazy. She sent me a video.
I just mentioned her, and there she is.
Yep. See.
My computer just told me that my internet is unstable.
I wouldn't know how to take that.
And I am about to turn my phone off of my internet because that might be why. I got Kim's group, Black Discus.
Black Discus.
Hi, Francis.
Francis, welcome.
All right, that's about to be enough.
When are you gonna get some discus, Francis? It's time again.
Okay. I think they can see us. That's okay. As long as the video continues to go, even if my computer doesn't want to cooperate.
More investments. We need to do more investing.
Carrie, I'm going to go ahead and throw some questions out to you. These came off of Facebook.
Facebook. All right. These will be good.
I'm going to start with this one. And I'm going to try to get these into chronological order. How do you make your tank walls white?
How do I make my tank walls white?
Yeah.
Well, I usually don't use white. I use like a sky blue, baby blue, light blue, and I use acrylic latex paint. I paint the bottom of the tank, the outsides, back and sides, and the outside bottom, of course, like I said. And usually just 2 coats with a small roller. Let it dry a day and you're good to go. That's how I do it.
Well, ours are not white either. Ours are seaside foam, and it's spray, and it is what is the name of that thing? Rust-Oleum. I'll have to find a paint can later. I can't remember the name of the Rust-Oleum, but I use Rust-Oleum.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I've seen many. I've actually used black high gloss Rust-Oleum on the bottom of one of my tanks, bigger tanks, 150. So I got the sides blue, but I got the bottom black because I used to keep wild angels and I wanted that bar to show, and that's kind of how you have to do it. They look terrible in a blue tank. But anyways, that's yeah, that holds real well, especially when it gets wet.
Happy Mother's Day, Amanda and Kim and all the other mommies.
Happy Mother's Day, everyone.
Okay. How to artificially make a pair. I'm assuming he means forcing a pair.
I say this all the time. Your best pairs are going to be your pairs that bond on their own. However, you can force pair if you get that right combination right, but it's going to require a handful of fish. So if you have that handful of fish, put them all together and try to get one to bond on its own would be the best goal. Force pairing does work, but not all the time. And again, a bonded pair on their own is going to do better, go farther as far as raising fry, going the whole 9 yards, all that good stuff. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. But I mean, it can be done. It's not impossible.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a male that we took out his female and replaced her with another female, and they're laying eggs together. So I mean, it can be done. Some of them may not get along. You do need to watch them.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to put a percentage on that, it kind of depends on how many fish you have. If you only have like 6 or 8 fish and you're trying to force pair, well, you might fail. If you got a group of 10 to 15, you might have better odds of getting a force pair to actually do something.
Right. Why do pigeon blood and non-pigeon blood produce peppered offspring?
So the pigeon blood's a mutation. So the mutation was that fish didn't carry bars, but it carries the peppering as that's their their routine to camouflage themselves. So instead of the bars, it was more spread out through the body in a peppering fashion. So when the fish is breeding, stressed, sick, scared, trying to hide, they're going to darken up a lot. And naturally, if you put them in a darker tank, they're going to darken up and try to blend into that. That would be more of peppering because of trying to fit into its natural environment that it's in. Not natural, but mimicked environment. So that's why it's going to darken up. So you can help it by putting in a lighter color, and it will lighten up a lot. But that's why the pigeon blood, has all that peppering, because none of them carry any mood bars. So their way of defense and showing how they feel is expressed in the peppering, which is actually the mood bars just broken up all over the body. And that's why they have them. And a lot of them, when they first came out, they were very peppered. A lot of the Asians bred them into golds and line bred them to clean them up and get them nice and beautiful without all that peppering. So anytime you go backwards into, cross a pigeon blood with a brown base, depending on the genetics, if they carry the golden genetics, you could end up with a lot of clean fish as well. But again, most will be dirty. It's a matter of selecting them out. But that's the reason why.
When breeding for new strains, when should your offspring be back crossed?
That's going to depend what you're doing. Are you doing spotted fish? Are you going after solid fish? And then your technique in breeding. You can do inbreeding, or you can line breed. You can also do, like you're saying, back cross would have to be more in the line of inbreeding. You'd be inbreeding fry for certain traits, and then you would instead of taking that long route of going, mixing the lines, but keeping them all related, you would back cross to the parents to speed things up a little bit. And that would have to be done. Your fish to start with would have to be, like a pure strain type fish, not a mutation cross where other genetics are involved with that fish. But it does depend what you're doing. Spotted fish would be a different way of going about it compared to doing solid fish. So, yeah.
Here's the question for you. If you're line breeding your fish and you get to the fish that you're wanting, the strain that you're wanting to produce, would it not be good to breed that one with an albino, and then those out crosses breed back to the original pair?
Yeah, I mean, so what you're doing with albino is considered a mutation. So any fish you cross to albino, you're usually going to get, that offspring that look like the parent fish that's a non-albino. But however, when you mess around with albinos, it throws you back to wild, genetics. So now your second and third generations, depending how you crossed your albinos and what you're trying to do, like say you're using albino golden. Well, you don't want to breed that with a red turquoise unless you're going after red turquoise and you're trying to bring out the golden gene and all that. You're kind of doing like, say, reds, so more of a pigeon blood variety. Pigeon blood's a dominant trait, so you're going to get mostly pigeon bloods. Well, first generation, you'll get all pigeon bloods, but it would be a quicker way to work that line. And it's about collecting fry, making a line A, collecting fry, making a line B, C, D, and you only inbreed those lines. A, you only breed with A. B, you only breed with B. And then when you get to that fish that you want, then you cross the lines, cross A with B. You got this fish that you were looking for that traits. You were looking for these traits. So now you found them in line A and line C. So now you would inbreed those lines and start new lines, and you'd keep repeating that. And that's kind of how you would go about it. Albino could be a good cheat, though. I understand what you're saying. You would have to, it's kind of like using backdoor genetics, but you got to be careful with that throwback genes on albinos, and it
Right.
throws back old ancestor genes, and that'd be your wild fish.
Janine wants to know, how do you amend your water so the eggs don't calcify? She has RO but struggles to get a stable ratio. My tap TDSs are 150 and the pH is 8.2.
Okay, so
Since my stuff is about the same, or
yeah, you should go with that one because yours is pretty much the same.
right. Janine, what we did was we brought the TDSs down. We brought them way down, probably about 50, and the eggs were still calcifying. So what we did was we brought them back up for each next batch until we got to a higher hatch rate. You may not be able to go with 0. You may be able to go with 0. But if you go with 0, you're probably going to need to add some buffer to the water so that you're not completely without minerals. But just, you have to play with your water and find your number, because everybody's number is different. My number is about 120. So
yeah, and and another thing, I use a conductivity meter, and a lot of people use a TDS meter. And if you know the math, 17.9 parts per million with the TDS meter is also equal to 33 microsiemens with a conductivity meter. So if you do the math and add it all up, you can kind of figure out where you're at, whichever meter you have. And I use a conductivity meter, and my happy place is around 80 microsiemens to 100 microsiemens. And I do that by mixing tap water and half tap and half RO. Because my water is pretty moderate. I'm around 7 kH, 7 GH. My pH is about 7.2. So it's a little easier for me. Where Tammy's telling you to add minerals and trace elements, you might need to do that if you're going to use a lot of the RO water, because that's stripped of all the good stuff and all the bad stuff.
Yeah. Something else to keep in mind, with a pH that high, you do have to worry about bacteria. So you do need to treat the eggs for bacteria. They can also cause the eggs to die, even if they're fertilized. We had that issue as well, where I could actually see the development in the eggs, but over a period of time, all of them turn white, and that can be caused by bacteria with a higher pH.
Yes. High pH is bacterial playground. When you get into the higher numbers, your filtration works great, but you have more bacteria count in your water, different types. Yeah.
On the flip side of that, you can grow some really big fish in that high pH.
Yeah, it's good.
Yes,
It's full of
right.
minerals, trace elements, nutrients. If you can do the balance, which isn't hard to do, keeping the water clean, scrubbing the tank down, checking your filters, keeping the temperature, feeding, no problems. It's the people that run that high pH and don't want to clean their tank, don't want to change the water, overfeed, that just boom, that's the start of a disaster. So, and it depends on bigger fish, smaller fish, of course, but yeah, it's always good. They like their water changes. The discus love their water changes.
Janine asked about methylene blue. We were using methylene blue. We have switched to formaldehyde, 37%. It seemed to work a lot better.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of formaldehyde myself. There's other products out there, methylene blue. There's a lot of talk on things that can happen with the discus fry and sterilization, and I'm not a big believer on it because I used to breed angelfish, and I only used methylene blue on them, and I've never had that problem. I've raised up batches, didn't have deformalities, bent spines, all this other stuff they claim that it does. I just don't care for it because it stains the tank. It takes a while to get out of the water. It's also bad on the parent slime coat, and that's what the fry need to feed off of. So if you're leaving it in there too long, or you're putting too much in, and that starts to become a problem, there's easier methods. You can even use hydrogen peroxide, Maroxy. There's a bunch of different ways to go about it, but yeah, I prefer to stay away from the blue. I like the formaldehyde, and it's just the fish spawn 1 drop per gallon right after they spawn. You don't have to do a water change after. It's an oxidizer, so it dissipates after 24 hours. As long as you prepped your tank, been keeping it clean before the spawning, you got the eggs, and you done all this, no need for a water change till them fry hatch out. You should be all set.
Yeah, and that's a big thing is you have to keep your breeder tanks clean. If you're not keeping it clean, you're getting a buildup of bacteria in that breeder tank, and they will attack the eggs. So.
Yep, and if you get past that point, your fry can end up with the same problem, bacterial infection, and once you lose a couple of days of not feeding them and having to use medications on them, if you don't know how to get yourself out of that, it's pretty much doom and gloom from there. So good to keep things really clean.
Discus Hub wants to know what the minimum fish is to put into a tank for grow out. I don't think there is a minimum.
I mean, when we talking 2.5-inch fish, we want to keep them in a group. We want to keep them nice and tight. We don't want them lost and spread out that much all over the tank. So, they are cichlid. Again, 6 would be a small group. 8 would be a better group. Not for a 40 gallon, not for a 55, but I would consider maybe a 55 to start, but plan on moving them to a 75 rather soon if they're doing really well. But that's a tough question. Depends about how determined.
It depends, Yeah.
I mean, I could do it. I could raise 6 fish in a 40 gallon, but I'll be water changing the shit out of it and feeding them like crazy, and just a lot of maintenance. But it can be done.
Yeah.
How determined are you?
I'm waiting for some more questions. We don't really have any at the moment. I'm sure some people have some questions. Y'all, I asked Carrie a question the other day, and Carrie was stumped right along with me. And what I asked Carrie was, when you've got 30 babies, you've already done your culls, you've got the best of your batches in a tank, and you're sitting there looking at them, how do you choose which ones you want to be your next breeders? Because at that time, you're picking out the ones you want to keep versus the ones you want to sell. So you've got to make that decision, and you don't know which ones are male or female. You don't know which ones are going to grow out to be the best ones. So how do you make that decision at that age? And Carrie said that was a real hard one.
Very much. Yep. And don't stick them in show tanks and things that they're hard to get to, because that makes it even harder. They yeah, I mean it's when you're starting off small, it's hard to get rid of them, because you still risk that chance when you're holding on to like 2.5, 3 inch fish. Say you got 40 of them, and now you need to get rid of 15. That hurts, because you really don't know if the ones you're pulling out, are gonna get any bigger, or are they gonna grow any bigger, or how big they're gonna get. So that's kind of where I get greedy, and I always hold on to like 30 of them and try to raise them all the way to the top. But and then from there call out again. But yeah, getting rid of them small is tough. It's tough. I go for body shape first off. You know, if they're deformed, bad fins, bad body shape, chips in the eyes. I don't like indents in the body and things like that either, or deformed dorsal fins. I usually get rid of them. They're culled, but from there it's size as well. If they're not growing, they're gone for that. And then you get to that happy place where you got like 50 and they're all nice and uniform. That is hard. That's hard when you got to get rid of 20 out of there. So hard. I've actually, done that for people and given away the wrong fish. Like, oh, I wanted to keep that one. And it just happens because you start chasing them around in the tank. Someone's waiting on you. It's impossible. So yeah, be prepared. Grab what you want, stash it, put it in your secret tank, lock it up.
I'm sure
what they don't see won't hurt them.
You don't want anybody to see those fish.
Right. There ain't nothing in there.
When you move a pair from the community tank to a breeding tank, do they need time to reset before they start to lay eggs again?
Oh, sure. That's and that's going to depend on the pair. Every pair is different. So some pairs might adjust in a day. I've seen pairs moved and spawn immediately, or other pairs just like lose it, just don't know what to do. They're scared, they're timid, they're hiding. It all depends on each individual, because like I said, every fish has its own personality. Each pair has their own bond and their own personality as well. So it will depend. It could go from anywhere from, a week to maybe a few months. Things you could do to maybe help them get a little more comfortable is, turn up the temperature a little bit. Try to pay more attention to them and stay on top of them. Just a lot more observation. Lighting might help here and there, depending on, and don't get me wrong, there are bad luck tanks too, where they're just not in the right place, where the fish are always spooked in these certain tanks. So that could also be a reason. Just trying to give you some options here. But yeah, definitely anytime something's moved, expect that. But then again, discus, there's always exceptions. Like I said, you can move them. I've moved a pair the other day into a tank and they spawned it immediately. So that's how it goes.
All right. What I was laughing about a minute ago is Kim said a secret tank. I'm looking for it next time I come to visit.
Yeah. I've showed you everything. I'm just greedy.
Drake's Discus wants to know how do you introduce foster parenting?
Believe it or not, it's like the simplest thing that's done. Your pair spawns, you have another pair. I'm hoping, this works well if you're like trying to breed discus. So if you're breeding discus, you have, let's say, 2 or 3 pairs laying around. So just by moving the eggs to another pair, they will instantly take to them. Especially if it's a pair that takes care of fry and raises eggs. I'm not talking about a pair that eats their eggs all the time and then you want to give them the eggs. That might work here and there, but I wouldn't risk it that far. So again, I've even separate like 75-gallon tanks with dividers, and the fry can swim through it. So I'll have pairs that will raise fry, hatch, lay eggs, hatch out fry, raise fry, and some of the fry will escape to the other side, and that pair will actually end up raising them as well. So that instinct for discus to raise, breed, and take care of the young is it's a genetic instinct, in my opinion. It's so strong that this is why you're able to do those types of things with them. So it's very easily done. I wouldn't be nervous about it. Just do it and see. And that, that's the thing with it. It's wild how it works, but they just take right to it for some reason. They see it, they know what's going on, and they know what to do. So yeah, very strong instinct with the discus.
Absolutely. And Carrie knows about this. What's it been, Carrie, about 7 months ago that I had the 2 male red covers in the tank?
Mm-hmm.
I handed them a cone with the melon eggs on it because I was having issues with the melon couple fighting. So I gave them the eggs and they took care of them. All the eggs ended up turning white, but they took care of those eggs until they mildewed and we took them out. I mean, they were just awesome.
So they melted away.
I have no doubt that those 2 males that had been shimmy shaking on the cone with each other would have definitely taken care of the babies had they hatched. I have no doubt about it.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing when you, usually if you get a pair that raises fry, you're good to go. They're going to have some hiccups and problems along the way. You don't expect them to breed every 10 days and produce fry every time, but usually you can rely on them and say, yeah, this is a good pair. Other pairs that you have to mess around with, a recent golden pigeon blood pair I have. I mean, I had to go through so much to get this to happen. The trick that finally worked was giant sponge filter on one end of 55-gallon, bright light on the other side of the tank with the pair and the cone, lowered the water level down as much as I could. I mean, I rocked that filter that none of the fry could swim to that side. And then a little bit of light kept them over there. And it took them a while to go to the backs. So, I mean, yeah, there's little tricks you can do, definitely. But that instinct to, take care of the eggs and even the other fry, if you move the fry, works just as well. But it's amazing. It really is. You got to try it. If you got the room, you got the fish to do it, don't be scared. Don't hesitate. It's astonishing.
Yeah. I also asked if you should keep the lighting dim for the pair so that they will lay eggs.
Again, it depends on the pair, but I've always been a big fan of keeping the lights really, really dim on everything. Again, with certain pairs, you have to play with the lights a little more. Sometimes you need to brighten them up on one side of the tank, rock your filter on the other side of the tank. But this only works good with longer tanks, not with the little short box 20s or the 29s. It's a little harder to do what you want to do. And that's a good way to do albinos, lots of pigeon bloods that are hard to get to attach. But yeah, definitely dimmer lighting works real well, off to the side. If you're breeding brown-based fish, lot easier. You shouldn't have to really do too many tricks and mess around, but you have to sometimes. It depends on the pair. So yeah, I'm off for dim lighting and keeping a light on all night, especially when the fry are about to go free swimming and it's time to turn everything off. So I definitely will keep a room lighting on so nothing gets lost. And again, the bottom of your tank, the color of that, if you got black bottom, the parents are going to lose them when they fall off the cone or they try to go free swimming. The blue is going to help to reflect the light, help the fry, help the parents spot the fry. The more the parents stimulate the fry by grabbing them, putting them back on the cone, stimulating, that goes a long way for getting them to attach. So I would definitely, I've always been a fan of dim lighting.
We can't really dim the lights in here, so, but the only lighting on the tanks is the overhead light for the fish room. So their tanks aren't real bright anyway.
Right.
So
it ain't like you can't just throw a piece of something over the top too, a piece of foam to dim it out a little more.
Kim wants to know if you can move the fry from one pair to a different pair.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Our yellows laid at the same time as our newer melon couple, and we moved some of their fry over because they had such a small batch and the melon couple had a bigger batch. So we moved their fry over with the fry from their batch.
Yeah, Kim, I don't really know how other way to convince you on how easy that is to perform and do. You just throw them in there and they take to them. But here's something I did, so this might help you believe me. So my friend from Singapore, we were he was breeding some fish. We were staying in touch. We kind of had the same fish from the same source, and I was a cheater. I told him that this pair produced fry, and I finally got him to go. And he was so mad at me. He was so mad at me because he couldn't get his pair to produce. And we had, like I said, the same fish. Well, I cheated and I took fry from another pair and I put him on that pair and I took a picture and sent it to him. So yeah, I mean, you could do it, especially when they're little. And if they've already have fry on their backs, doing a mix in, oh, that goes even smoother. I mean, if you're saying the pair doesn't have any fry and now you're going to put fry in them, that could be a little more tricky. The pair might kind of get a little spooked at first and dart around, but eventually they'll take to it. But mixing in fry that parents already have fry, oh, that goes really smooth.
Yeah, I've got a friend that's got a pair. Actually, he's got two pairs from the lot, and they laid eggs in the tank when they were still together. So he put in a divider to separate the two pairs. Well, he's got the free swimmers, and the free swimmers are now swimming from one pair to the other, and both pairs are caring for the fry.
Right. So I had a few questions from, it was from Joe. So they had a lot of defects out of a bunch of fry. So he's like, what's going on? What's going on? And my first impulse was, your water was too soft. You didn't have enough minerals, not enough trace elements. So he wrote me back. He's like, what are you talking about? I was using straight tap water. So I'm like, well, it can also happen with harder water. And he's like, I've never heard such a thing. Well, here goes. Definitely harder water, higher pH. Again, higher pH is going to make toxins more toxic, metals more toxic, ammonia, anything in the water is going to be more toxic. And high toxins in your water when fry are developing can do just as bad and be as bad as too soft water. So, okay, I'm done.
Okay, another question, guys. I've got one from Facebook too, but I wanted to see if anybody in the stream has one. Pull that back up too.
Stream.
Okay. If you take a single male and a single female and put them into a breeding tank, can you expect them to pair up?
There's a chance. Yes. There's a chance.
If they're not previously paired, you shouldn't have any issues with that. They should pair up if she's ready to lay eggs.
And it's a male and female.
Stu Serchik asked about stimulating the pair to spawn. You want to go back over that one a little bit?
To stimulate them to spawn. Many ways of doing that. Frequent water changes. Some pairs might like no water changes. Slight temperature increases, and then as you're doing the water change, a colder drop in water change the temperature. That's also a good stimulation. Sometimes giving them a blackout, a couple of days of darkness, and then firing them back up. Letting the pair see another pair next to them. I always talked about setting up your tanks next to each other where you can slide cardboard inserts between them if you need to later on down the road. But some pairs just seeing another pair, especially when someone brought that up earlier. Oh, I moved my pair and they're not doing what they used to do. They're scared. To get that pair out of that mode, just them seeing another pair in a tank next to them could just be the change in that, getting that fish to spawn again. So yeah, many ways of doing it.
We've used the fish on the other side before.
Yeah.
Guy that didn't want to spawn. They were a proven pair, but they didn't want to spawn. So we did that. We divided the tank and put that pair on the other side.
Right. I mean, everyone hears, oh, what's the best tank to breed? And what's the best for this? What's the best for breeding? And you're going to get all these solid answers on what people do. But I mean, if you really are going to be breeding discus, you got to you got to have a variety of different tanks. And that's because the pairs are different. Like I say, some of them one guy will be able to breed these fish, but he sends them to you and you'll never be able to breed them again. So it's all about, this ain't working, try something else. That ain't working, let's try this. Maybe move them over here or move them over there. Try to put them next to some other fish, or maybe even throw them back in a community tank where you can drop a divider in later. So, once you get them going. So, yeah, they're definitely a weird, difficult fish, and that's where they get that rumor that they're hard to keep, because nothing's set in gold with these guys, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Stu Surchick wants to know if you have any tips for artificially raising fry.
Well, I'm not a big fan of artificially raising. I've done it only a few times myself, with fair results, not good results. A lot of people like to do different things. There's little box methods, black box method. My friend John Nicholson has done. They make this box and float it in another tank. The key is water quality. You want to have a vast amount of water. So dropping this little tub in a 40-gallon tank is not unheard of. Some guys can do it in little 1-gallon bowls and just are stars at it and change water consistently and are feeding consistently and just bang it out. That's done with egg yolk and spirulina powder and baker's yeast, and there's a bunch of different methods of doing it. And if you get desperate and you really, really, really have to do it, send me a email or a message, and I can kind of point you in the right direction, get you a nice recipe, and I mean, you can do it. It just takes a little dedication, a little bit of work. So yeah, I can help you out a little more, but it's a process. It's a process. And it takes that dedication to get it done, but it can be done. I'm not a big fan of it, but if I get desperate, it happens.
Colin wants to know, what size or age do you move to a grow out?
That's going to depend on the amount of fry. If you have a batch of 80 fry, well, you're going to be able to leave them fry with that parents longer. If you're feeding brine on the second, third day, helping the parents feed the fry, that's going to allow you a little longer time to leave them with the parents. But, when you get up to some people having 300, 400 fry, which is insane, I mean, that's going to really take a toll on the parents really, really quick. And if you're not feeding baby brine in the meantime, I just had to rhyme. That's going to that's going to account for you to have to pull them fry way faster or pull the parents faster. They're like little piranhas, and they will strip the parents down real quick. And, if they cause damage and you get an infection, you can lose that pair if they get sick. So, and I've seen, you'll see fish. People have brought this up before online. They're like, look at this fish. It looks so weird. It looks like it's got like racetracks going off through it. That's a fish that actually has damage from raising fry. It was left with the fry too long. And you'll see it from here and there. You'll notice it if you look for it. It's not a real common picture that always pops up on the internet, but there might be some pictures on Simply or something that have pictures of it if you want to take a look at it. But yeah, they can do damage. So you have to really pay attention to them. Keep your eye on them. Usually the pair, once they've had enough, they'll give you signs like, get away from me, or the male's always trying to dump the fry on the female, or vice versa. Hiding off in the corner. They like to go sideways too when they're trying to get away from the fry. They'll like float like this or way down at the bottom. And usually if you have the fry already grazing off the bottom, you're pretty safe to go ahead and move them or move the pair. They will grow faster with the parents as long as you can leave them with the parents without causing damage to the parents. So that's always good to do if you can, manage the water quality, feeding, all that involved, depending on the size tank you started off in. But yeah, that's something you really need to pay attention for. You might not catch on it at first, but you'll notice, you'll see them getting a little irritated. They won't be so docile with them anymore. Kind of like they're getting a little, you can see that they're getting a little upset with them. So just look out for that, and they'll show you. They will.
And the way that we've started doing it is we get to a certain point that we've got the babies already eating fresh flakes. We've got them eating baby brine shrimp,
Awesome.
granules. When they're hanging away from the parents, they're not on the parents anymore. That's pretty much when we move them, because they're no longer eating off the parents anyway. They're eating what we give them.
Right.
They're coming to the front of the tank, which our babies tend to do because they're pigs. We can put them in their own tank. So, and that's just kind of how we do it.
Yep.
Kim Walker wants to know how to get them to stop breeding.
Put some goldfish in there, and an arowana, and a sting, and a teacup stingray, which there's no such thing of.
Another question from Facebook, and this one is also from Stu, and he wants to know what the guidelines are for culling.
Culling, yeah, we've talked about this, but it's definitely a start. First thing I notice is size, and fish that are not sized up with the the majority, the number, those fish are immediately culled for that. So that's the first thing that's called for. Second thing would be you start to notice the defects, body shape, nicks and stuff in the eyes, maybe deformed dorsal fins, indents in the body. There's a multiple of different defects, and some people are okay with certain ones. Some people are picky like me and don't like any of them, which is hard when you're breeding discus, especially a lot of domestics. But from there, it's all that. And all that I just mentioned, a lot of that you will not see either, especially if you have a nice group of 80 swimming around back and forth. It's hard to detect all that stuff. So a lot of that you won't catch till later on. So for the most part, it's shape and size. I'm looking for fish that are all staying nice and uniform, making sure they're all eating and doing well from there. And it's most of my calls are too small, not growing, too small, not growing. And that's kind of where I start. Then once I see I get them up to about 3 inches, then I can see some of the defects that I might have missed. And a lot of them will be your eyes. They're hard to see when they're little. But like missing pelvic fins, bad dorsal fins, a lot of that you can see when they're smaller. So I try to go after fish like that and get rid of them. From there, again, they will continue to grow, and you'll still end up with some laggers. You get them up to 3.5 inches. You're going to get some fish that are just not going to get any bigger than that. And those will be the next little group to go. And from there, usually the rest will do okay. You end up with some smaller females and bigger females. But from there, those fish are usually like your best ones. A lot of big males, of course. Usually when I keep fish, I like I said, I go after body shape and size. So that's why I end up with a lot of males. But yeah, so you want to keep some of them smaller fish, but again, be careful not to get rid of all your smaller fish, because most of them are female. You will be surprised though. You end up with some nice giant females. That's kind of why I keep all the bigger fish, to hopefully get a couple of those, but it happens. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I go about it. Glasses, flashlight. I mean, I was telling Tammy the other day, I'll take a nice big tank, one of my best tanks with good lighting. I'll put a divider in it, one that I can manage, and I will get all the fish on one side of the tank. And this would be a call for size and body shape. And I'll just kind of like get a little tiny guppy net, and I'll pull them to the glass one by one. And if I like them, I let them go through. They go through. If they're bad, I net them, pull them out, and keep the other ones locked in, and kind of go through them that way. A lot of people like to hand pick them too and go through them. It's a little bit of work. I've done that before too, but it's a little rough. So it's mostly just, it's not something you can say, I'm going to call this tank today and get it done and over with. That is not going to happen. It's an ongoing couple of weeks of just paying attention, looking at the fish, observing all of them. Because, you know, they can be good on the left side and bad on the right side. So you're not always seeing all this stuff. So it's a little tricky. So yeah, it's tough, but yeah, it definitely needs to be done. I hate growing big fish up that I let get by, and I see these defects, and it's got to be a bad one. Usually, it's pretty easy to catch, but like a half of the eye missing, or even the small pupils. Sometimes you have a smaller eye, a normal size eye. Those are the ones that get on me. Sometimes I usually don't catch those right away. So that's all I got.
Right. When you see a breeding tube come out of the female, does that mean that she is ready to lay eggs?
I would say for the most part. I've seen females where they just never put it away. It's just there all the time. But you have to consider if that's what's going on. Yeah, it's more than likely a sign of ready to breed.
Carrie, the storms that we talked about before that we started are moving in. So if you lose me, Kim is going to message you with the questions.
Okay.
I don't think I'm gonna lose power, but just in case.
Right.
The next question, does colder water stimulate breeding?
Yes, definitely a temperature decrease will help. And so has a temperature increase during a water change. So don't give up. If the code ain't working, try a little warmer. See if that'll work.
Francis wants to know if Samara and red cover are the same fish.
No. Samara is I thought it's more of a Ica red that was bred out. They bred the Heckle bar out of it. And then they also used like very red, brown, wild browns. And that was the start of it. It's a barless fish, so it should have no bars. The virgin red was the start. What was he asking? The rose red?
No, the red cover and the Samara.
They could be the same fish. Yes, sorry. So it would just be.
Samara is a wild fish, is it not?
Yeah, they are. They're a cross, but they're crossing domestic fish for color. But it was bred. It was originally bred from wild fish. Yes. Same with the virgin red. It's an Lancer, but it was crossed with Ghost to start the virgin red, and then the virgin red was used to create the rose red, and of course the rest of the other reds. Your pigeon bloods were more line bred. Your solid melons, your Marlboros, that was all mutations along of line breeding. But as far as I know with the Samara, there's many different things that were done, different breeders who claim they were Samara, but the original Samaras I believe were Ica reds bred to remove the fifth bar, and then back cross to very red brown base, brown wilds, and from there that was the start. And that's how they got rid of the bars on most of them.
Colin, if your babies are an inch, they should be in their own tank at this point, especially since they're already eating everything. Logan, we already went over your questions. They were the first ones that we did actually, but I'm going to go ahead and do this one again. He's wanting to know, when breeding for new strains, when is it determined to back cross? Time to back cross.
Well, if you're in, what do you mean? He's saying he's inbreeding already and now he wants a back cross?
If you're breeding for new strains, when is it time to back cross? I mean, you're going to be back crossing the whole time when you're breeding for a new strain anyway.
Yeah. The reason why you're back crossing is you're trying to improve, you're trying to speed up the traits that you're after. So you're using the back cross. Maybe the mother holds something more that you're after, or the father. So you would use them, back cross them to the fry to speed that process up, instead of taking the fry, inbreeding the fry, and pulling that trait from the parents that aren't on the fry. So yeah, it can be very complicated. A lot would have to do with what you're starting with, what your goals are, what you're trying to do. You have to have some type of goal in mind.
Someone said that they were kidding, but I actually want to answer the question. They're asking what vaccine is good for the discus scare, Pfizer, Moderna, or AstraZeneca. Actually, I would go with the Johnson & Johnson because it's just one shot. You don't have to take them back in 2 weeks.
Is Francis still here?
I haven't seen him ask any questions since he asked that, but we were going.
Well, I just, because the Samara is a special fish, so it went a lot of different ways. There were two partners and they split off, so they were both doing a little different crossings with that fish.
Right.
They're both claiming them as a Samara. There's also a blue-faced Samara. So yeah, but I was just more talking. I'm not sure if they did use ghosts later on down the road. Somehow they put more red in it, but the original start was the Ica red, and they bred out the bars. But I believe they used ghost as well to start doing that, to get rid of the bars. I'm not sure on that one. That's an old one.
Yeah.
But yeah, red cover could be the
Still
same, depending on what the strain was and what they bred. So
Okay, Taha Rose Red and red covers are not the same strain. I don't think. Are they, Carrie?
rose red and red cover.
I don't think they're the same.
Yeah, they're pretty much the same. They might be a little different here and there. A rose red, again, is a virgin red discus that's crossed with a wild brown discus. And then you have your virgin red, which is a Lancer ghost cross. So you have those genetics in that fish to remove bars, but depending on what's crossed, recessive wise, whites are very, like ghost is a recessive, but it can be dominant depending on what it's used on. And that fish was used to remove bars in fish. So
right, the red cover has bars and the rose red does not, correct? Or
no, I've seen them with bars as well. You see them all. Rose red covers should be barless. Rose red should have bars. A San Mara should not have bars. A virgin red would have bars. But as they kept breeding them, they were already crossed with ghosts. So there was
I haven't worked a lot with the reds yet. So
yeah, well, there again. So when the breeder was doing this and they were selling them, well, all the virgin reds that they were selling all were being sold with the bars. They were not giving away the ones that didn't have bars, because they used them later on to create the red covers and other solid reds. They've been more crossing them back to pigeon bloods. So like you're seeing now, you'll see your rose reds or your red covers will throw melons and other types of reds.
I had one that I actually got it from a local fish store. It didn't grow very well, but instead of getting the bars, when it would get stressed out, it would go white. It would go just white. And it was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen. But every time we did water changes, that fish turned white.
Wow. Lighten up.
Kenny, super red turquoise. Okay, she got a shipment in November from Kenny of the super red Turks. She wants to keep the line going. Is it possible? At some point, she would need to outcross, I would think. But yeah, I don't see any reason why you couldn't keep the line going.
Right. So we don't know if these fish are related, brother and sister. We can assume they are. We assume that you probably have a group of 6 or 8 of them. If you had a breeding pair and you bred them and you had a nice batch of fry, this is how you'd want to start off now. Hopefully you get a good batch of fry. They do well. discus can be inbred a lot more than what people think, but they do lose size, so consider that. But what you would want to do is you want to get this first batch of fry, and you want to try to keep all your best ones. Try to keep a majority of them, not sell any of them if you want to keep this line going. From there, you're going to, keep them in a nice big tank, grow them out to their full size, and then kind of go over them and say, maybe these are a little more deeper red. These are more of a maroon red. This Turk is a little more vibrant green, where these are a little more bluer. Then from there, you would separate those. Keep all like your darker reds with green, your deeper reds with more blue. You would separate those. Now, from there, create pairs from those two lines. You would inbreed them only. Try to go up to at least 3 generations of inbreeding. And then from there, if everything's still going well, then from the 3rd generation of inbreeding, I would cross line A with line B. So your bluer ones and your greener ones, now cross them, get another batch of fry, and then you would separate off your 2 lines again and start over. So you're not actually destroying your gene pool. You're kind of rotating in it. You're keeping it going like in a circle. But you have to be selective, very selective, and very picky on what you're breeding when you're doing that. So, you can't just go, I got this really tiny 4-inch female and nothing else laying eggs, so I'm just going to use her to keep the line going. That one female can just put you on a downward spiral of smaller fish for future generations. So you have to be pretty selective when you're doing it that way. But start off 1 generation, 2 generations. If everything's still looking good and you're getting nice size on the fish and they all seem nice and prolific, then continue on. But that would be a way to rotate the genes without losing it. Later on down the road, like Tammy said, introducing new blood or something very closely related or similar looking that you like, not a bad idea. I'm a big believer in breeding fish from different sources or not the same lines, and going from there. And that's the best way to do that, line breeding. But in your case, we're not sure. Yeah.
The melons that we got from the same source, and the babies from them we're planning to outcross with the yellow couple, which technically the female is actually also from the melon couple, but it's still with her being her babies being the outcross, I can cross them back to the melon babies. Since I've done that, and I've got several things going. I've actually got some pigeon, non-pigeon crosses that we're working on. But we have plans for our F2, F3, F4 generations. It's not that we're breeding these 2 fish together and then that's what we're going to sell. We actually have plans for down the road. So, I mean, we don't just breed just to have just the one thing.
Right. That's how you got to do it. Especially like she was saying, she wants to keep them for long term. I mean, that's how you want to think. You can start off even right now, getting another group of Turks and plan on crossing those to keep them going even longer. You would just be selecting out the ones that you like more that look like Kenny's from there, because you will get a different variety from the groups. But I mean, there's many ways of going about it.
Kim wants to know if a San Mara would be a good cross for a Kurukura. And Kim, you didn't spell it right, but that was a good try.
I mean, it wouldn't be a bad cross, but you're kind of going backwards.
Yeah, that would be my thought as well.
Are you able to move more wild looking fish, or are you able to move more domestic fish? You have to think of it that way, pet store wise, people, customers. So by doing that, you're gonna get more wild type looking fish.
Checking for more questions on Facebook. I don't have any at the moment on Facebook. You have a black bottom, Logan. You're going to need to scrape the paint off of the black, or scrape the black off of it and actually repaint the bottom of that tank. There is no other way to lighten the bottom of the tank other than to take the black off.
Right. Or put some white sand over it.
Yeah. But then you're asking for the bacteria.
But now you got more maintenance.
I don't know, Janine, if your water is exactly like mine, but you're sitting at an 8.2 pH. I do not think it would be in your best interest to actually mess with your pH. If your RO water is lowering it, that's fine. But you do need to be careful with lowering your pH. I just recommend not doing it.
Yeah, I would highly recommend that too as well.
Mine are sitting at 8.5. I've had 4 fish sent to Florida. I had water sent to Florida with 3 of those fish, and all 3 times my pH was 8.5. So mine is a very stable 8.5.
Right.
Kim's got 5 wild pairs, but she has 1 pair that's not getting along, so she's going to split them. That is what I did with my melon couple because the male almost killed the female. And they've had babies together. But she had been picking on him and he turned on her. So
Kim, you're doing awesome.
I hope so. Oh, the baby's over here. They're so pretty. I'm so proud of my babies.
Baby.
It's different than mine because my RO does not lower my pH. You're gonna need to buffer it. Carrie, what's the best thing to use to buffer RO water?
There's many products out there. I'd probably go with Kent RO Right, or even Seachem, or a good saltwater product. One of those companies. I'm kind of behind on what's hot right now as far as that goes because I don't use it. But there's a lot of products out there that are pretty good.
I missed a question and somebody just, so I had to scroll back up. He has a friend that's mixing wilds with domestic. So he's taking water from the domestic tank and introducing it to the wild tank, but then removes the domestic. And after a month, when the wilds settle in, he mixes them. Is that a good strategy?
Well, yeah, if you're dealing with pure wild fish that are coming from the wild, and same with the wholesaler, and they're used to that environment, and you're keeping them in that environment, and now you're deciding you want to switch them over to tap water, and you want to add your domestics with them. So hopefully you're quarantining them and doing all that right. But by adding water from your domestics to the wild tank, you've already caused cross contamination. Hopefully nothing happens, knock on wood. But yeah, you want to slowly increase the water that you're keeping your domestics in with these wilds. And it only takes about a week or 2 to do, really, before you have everything, they're pretty much adapted to your tap water. So that wouldn't be too hard to do. And then throwing your wilds in or throwing your domestics in with your wilds after that, that shouldn't be a problem at all.
Thanks you guys for putting out some products that can help with the RO. I appreciate that.
Yeah, there's look into it. There's a few of them out there.
I just decided I didn't want to play with my
right. Hey, that's what you want to do. You want to do what's best for you, what's easiest for you. Many different ways to breed, raise, and keep discus. You just got to do what's best and easiest for you.
Sure. We knew when we started that we weren't even sure that we could raise the discus in it. We bought a 10-pack from Discus Guy. They were real cheap. We brought them in to see if we could keep them alive, and they did so well in our water that we started actually looking for reputable suppliers to buy from. But we used those to find out if we could even raise them in our water before we started. But that's since we came back to the U.S. So, more questions, guys? Hour went fast. Okay. Okay, then we'll move on to the fry part, Carrie.
Okay.
That was the breeding part. We got to do the fry part now.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. I'm gonna go with the first. Well, that was already, we already answered that question.
We can
Okay,
answer it again.
well, that was the one that he's wanting to know everything. The sponge behind me, all of my sponge filters came from Amazon. And that is rated for a 75 gallon. So that'll tell you exactly which one it is.
Get a couple. Don't just put one in your tank. Well, breeding tank, just one, but if you're gonna raise smaller fish, put a couple in there.
Yeah.
Forget that rating.
This one actually has a canister on it. That's the reason there's only one sponge in there.
Well, I can't see. I wasn't trying to get on you.
You know, my tanks all have 2 sponge filters in it. I was trying to figure out why there was only one, and I forgot this one's the one with the canister on it. I was sitting here thinking, where's the other sponge filter? It's not in there.
God damn it, Carrie. Thanks for pointing that out, Carrie.
Okay. Carrie, when do you start baby brine shrimp? I'm on.
Third day. Second, third day, I'm ready. Second or third day, I'm ready to start feeding it. I don't expect them to eat much the first time, so I don't get crazy with it. It's just a little bit, especially if it starts off in the daytime. I'm there, like throwing a little bit every 4 or 5 hours. Usually by third, fourth day, they take to it pretty well. And it's just a matter of, adding it to your tank, not overfeeding it, watching what's going on. You'll see their little bellies get pink and fat. So don't dump more in. Wait till they kind of thin back out again before you feed them again. And you just keep that process going, and along with changing water.
And y'all keep in mind, I'm asking him questions that I already know the answer to, but questions that I get from people. And to keep questions going, I want to ask them. I guess I'll ask them myself. I just had a good question in my head just a second ago.
Voodoo.
What if you have an issue with a parent not being good with baby brine shrimp? What do you do?
Man, that's tough, man. I'll try to be a little bit lighter on the baby brine. I'll try to maybe even scoop my light over and give it a low pour so the baby brine stays attracted over there, but it really doesn't work too well with a filter going. I'll just keep my eye on them, but there's been times where I've had to move them. Yeah, it's just they don't like it. Gets in through their gills, and they start swimming backwards, trying to run from it, darting around. It's not been a real big issue. I haven't seen it too much, but every now and then I'll get a fish that just hates it.
Okay. What do you do to avoid the 30-day syndrome?
Again, as soon as I can, get them out of the breeding tank, keep them clean, give them lots of room, lots of good water changes, sometimes twice a day. Try to watch what you're feeding and not overfeed. It's really hard to overfeed fry. They constantly are eating it. They're like little piranhas, but yeah, those are things you can do. Keep them clean. Get your pair clean from the start before you even breed them. Make sure you get rid of body flukes and gill flukes, and these are all problems that cause secondary infections that will cause problems for fry and give you these infections. So yeah, those are things that you can do. Definitely. And put them in a bit when you put them in another tank or whatever you plan to do, add another filter to the breeding tank or move them to another tank, but make sure you got a couple filters going so you can rotate cleanings and really get the gook out of them. Some people are really delicate. This is probably not a bad thing to tell everyone, but I'll even when I do water changes, just like when I'm doing light water changes, I'll even kind of give my filter a little squeeze in the tank and try to keep my hose right there and suck most of that stuff out. But yeah, you gotta keep them really clean. You really gotta keep them clean. So that's key. That is key.
Any more questions, guys? I've already asked a few. And something I'll mention on choosing your breeder, choosing your pairs. The tank behind me has got the F1s that I got from Pat Husband in it. They're in this tank until they pair off. And that is the whole reason that they're in there, is so that they can pair off. Once they pair off, they'll move to a breeder tank. But that's kind of how we do it. We put the ones that we want to pair off, we put into a tank and let them choose who they want to mate with.
Right. That'll be a strong, good pair. That's for sure. That's what I do too. It's just a matter of, oh, got me 4 or 5 pairs, and then I'm done with the rest of them. They got to go. But you still you got to be careful. Just because you think you got some pairs, you got to go through all the motions to see. And then usually from there, if I get some fry, I'm ready to sell the rest of them.
Logan asked when to switch from baby brine shrimp to bloodworm. I don't really do bloodworm for babies.
Yeah. Well,
legs and granules and beef heart and big brine shrimp, regular brine shrimp.
Yeah, Logan. No, so what's happening here is even though you're feeding brine, you'll never be able to keep up as the fry grow. So eventually the fry will start grazing on what you're feeding the parents. So the fry will eat whatever you want them to eat. So if you're feeding the parents beef heart, the fry are going to take to the beef heart. If you're feeding some bloodworms, they're going to take to the bloodworms. You're going to do live worms, same thing. Pellets, blah, 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 so on and so on. So again, don't let them train you. You train them. You feed them what you want them to eat, and they'll start eating it as soon as possible. You'll notice them starting to graze off the bottom. If they're real small right now, they're probably just still on brine. But once they start venturing off and grazing on the bottom, it's just a matter of what you want to feed, and what you're feeding the parents is what they'll take to.
It's kind of funny. The next question is actually coming from my account. At what age can you medicate fry?
There's no difference along with the bigger fish, but the only thing you have to think about is their livers are much smaller. So what you're treating adult fish with, and you're trying to do the same with smaller fry, can be a lot more damaging long term. I would never recommend doing like flubenzenol. I'm talking pure flubenzenol, not the cut stuff, 5%. Praziquantel seems to be pretty safe with fry. Most of your oxidizers seem to be pretty safe with fry. I've never really had to treat fry with any antibiotics, so I wouldn't think they would bother them. So I doubt that would have an effect on them. But maybe more of the chemicals like malachite green, flubenzenol, levamisol, things like that would probably be a little more damaging to the fry. Where your antibiotics, I can't say for sure, but I would think not. But I know most oxidizers are not too bad on them. Praziquantel is not bad on them either. That dewormer plus is not bad on them either. But you got to be careful, definitely. Depends what you're treating for and what are you trying to do. So that's what I've had success with treating the fry. So. And this not gave me any problems. Metronidazole is another one you can probably use on fry with no issues. But again, remember their livers are smaller, so got to be careful.
They sure are, and medications can affect them a whole lot quicker than they can adults.
There's a lot of Dick Owl, a lot of other breeders, and Dick Owl will tell you if you ever have to treat your fish, that's it. Especially small fry, and it takes a lot out of them. So you kind of want to try to avoid treating the fry. I can do it. A lot of people are doing it. it can be done. It's just you got to, when you have fry, it's not like other fish. They're like babies. They're like infants. They're like raising children. You have to constantly be there watching. It's a chain reaction. And if you break one chain and break a link and mess something up, well, it might not show up today or tomorrow. It might show up a week from now, because of that bad event. But that's kind of how you got to go. You got to try to go skate right through it. Try to keep them, tip top shape and health. That's key.
Okay. Are there any special tips for breeding wilds as opposed to breeding domestics?
Yeah, a lot of people are manipulating the wild environment. Definitely going to give you a better shot than trying to throw them in your tap water. I'm sure there's been lots of cases of people breeding them in tap water, but I think to get your wild females to breed, manipulating the wild environment would be best.
Stu asked, is feeding frozen baby brine shrimp any different than feeding live baby brine shrimp?
Well, not at first. If you can get them on the frozen, that's awesome. But usually I have to feed live for 4 or 5 days. And then once they've taken to live and doing well on live, there's no problem getting them on frozen after that. But I've never had luck getting them on the frozen when they're, that first week. They just, if it's not moving, they don't go after it. If it doesn't come by them, it pretty much has to swim by them from the little fry to take a little step away from the parents to take a bite at it. The frozen goes right to the bottom as soon as you put it in the water. I mean, it floats for a little while, but it just goes straight to the bottom. Once the fry are grazing and a little bit bigger and older, yeah, I'm sure it would be easier to feed the frozen. But that's what I do. I start off with live, and once they're eating the live, like I said, they'll take to the frozen after that. Then I usually freeze it and do it that way. Definitely. I hope I didn't confuse you. That was like
Well, we freeze our excess.
Yeah.
You always just baby brine shrimp, and we do freeze our excess.
Right.
Feed it to them when they're bigger. So.
Yeah. Once I get bigger, it's easier to give them. Doesn't eat anything.
Absolutely.
I think I'm not sure if that's
where storm going on. This is terrible.
Yeah. I was not sure if she was asking, can you start feeding frozen baby brine like on second or third day of free swimming? Because that wouldn't be a good idea, I don't think, at all.
I don't think that they would eat it then.
Yeah.
I actually need to be stimulated by the movement.
Yeah.
Did we cover everything, Carrie?
I think so, pretty much.
Seems like we did. We covered everything from pairing them off to what to do for treating the eggs and what to do for the fry, when to start feeding them. I think we covered everything.
All right, go bail down the hatches.
All right, guys. Well, I'm going to shut it down now and go deal with this storm.
All right, everyone. Thank you again. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning in with us, and happy Mother's Day again to the mothers out there.
Yep. Happy Mother's Day again.
And you guys have a great day.
All right. Bye, Tammy.